Hello and welcome to DOZ Monologues, hosted by Eturuvie Erebor. DOZ Monologues, also known as DOZ Chronicles Audio Stories, aims to educate, inspire, and drive societal change. All stories are written and narrated by Eturuvie Erebor, and all rights are reserved, including the right of reproduction in whole or in part in any form. This is episode 24, titled Shadows of Betrayal. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. Shadows of Betrayal. Ebiere and I shared a close bond right from our early years. Our friendship began in nursery school, and over time we grew inseparable, almost like sisters. The foundation of our relationship was not only based on the fact that we lived in the same neighborhood and attended the same schools, including university, but also on the absence of sisters in our families. Ebiere for many years was an only child, and I was the only daughter in my family. This unique circumstance meant that we naturally filled the role of sisters for each other. When we both turned 18, Ebiere's long-held wish for a sibling was finally fulfilled with the birth of her sister, Tarila. Despite this addition to her family, the bond between Ebiere and me remained unshakable, forged over many years and experiences. It was clear, however, that Ebiere cherished her younger sister deeply. Her love for Tarila was evident, and there was nothing she would not do for her. Following our graduation from university, Ebiere and I left Warri behind and moved to Lagos in search of new opportunities. As we began our professional lives, we both entered serious relationships that eventually led us to marriage within a year of one another. We started our own families around the same time, and as a result, we continued to share many milestones and experiences together. Even though we had settled in a new city, our homes were conveniently located near each other, allowing our friendship and the sense of sisterhood between us to remain strong. When Ebiere married and was expecting her first child, her mother sent Tarila to live with Ebiere and Bina. Ebiere told me that Bina wasn't too keen on the arrangement, but she had convinced him that she would prefer to have Tarila living with her and helping around the house than employing a housemaid. Bina reluctantly agreed, and Tarila was enrolled in a school near the house. Not long after Ebiere gave birth to her first child, she confided in me about a deeply distressing incident. She revealed that Bina had violated Tarila, who was only 9 years old at the time. Confronted with the situation, Bina apologized, claiming that he had been drinking. He asserted that in his inebriated state, he mistook Tarila sleeping on the sofa for Ebiere. It was only when Tarila cried out in fear, making it clear that she was not his wife, that he realized his error. The explanation Bina gave was difficult to accept. I struggled to understand how he could confuse a 9-year-old girl with a 27-year-old woman, regardless of the circumstances. My own husband's words echoed in my mind. He often told me that even if he were blind and drunk, he would always recognize me beside him. This comparison only deepened my disbelief and concern over what had transpired. I made a conscious decision not to dwell on the incident further, as Ebiere and her family had accepted Bina's explanation, and he had offered an apology. The matter was effectively swept under the carpet. In fact, Ebiere confided in me that her mother had spoken to her privately, issuing a stern warning not to allow the story to reach anyone else's ears. She emphasized that there would be no benefit in shaming her husband. Given the trust between Ebiere and me, she shared everything with me, and so I tucked the matter away, burying it deeply in my memory. I never spoke about it to anyone, not even my husband, and I made sure to behave around Bina as though I was completely unaware of what had happened. Despite my efforts to forget, the incident planted the seed of doubt. As the years passed and Tarila entered her teenage years, growing into a younger version of Ebiere and blossoming, I began to observe subtle changes in her interactions with Bina. Around the time Tarila was 16, I started to suspect that something about their relationship was unusual. Tarila seemed entirely at ease with Bina, engaging freely with him. I recall one particular moment when she remarked that Timmy, Ebiere's son, slept just like his father. The comment struck me as odd, and I raised an eyebrow, wondering how Tarila could know such an intimate detail about her older sister's husband. However, since Ebiere herself did not seem troubled by it, I chose to remain silent. During the period when Tarila was writing her senior secondary school exams, an unsettling incident occurred. One evening, Ebiere rang me in tears, distressed and desperate for help. She explained that Bina was angrily throwing Tarila's belongings out of the house, declaring that he no longer wanted her living there or looking after his children. The situation was so fraught that I did not press Ebiere for details about what had provoked Bina's actions. Instead, my immediate response was to support my friend. I got into my car and drove straight to their home. My presence often had a calming effect on Bina, largely due to the respect he had for my husband's family. Having married into an influential family, I was aware that Bina had leveraged this connection in his business dealings. True to form, when he saw me arrive, his anger subsided, just as Ebiere had anticipated it would. Upon speaking with him, I learned that he had seen Tarila being dropped off after school by a man while he was working from his home office. According to Tarila, the man had merely given her a lift because it was raining and nothing untoward had happened. Bina, however, insisted that this man was Tarila's boyfriend and argued that if she was already associating with boys at 16, she would be a bad influence on his son and daughter. Tarila was distraught, pleading with both Ebiere and Bina, and maintaining that she was telling the truth. She had no boyfriend. Her sincerity was evident to me, and even Ebiere vouched for her, saying she regularly checked Tarila's belongings and had never found anything to suggest otherwise. Eventually, Bina's anger abated and he allowed Tarila to remain in the house. I returned home, but the incident lingered in my thoughts. Perhaps influenced by the doubt that had been planted years before, I began to question the true motive behind Bina's anger. Was he genuinely concerned about his children? Or was there an undercurrent of jealousy? The intensity of his rage seemed more like that of a jealous lover than a protective father, and I quietly stored that unsettling thought away. After this confrontation, any apparent issues between family members faded. I observed that Bina became even closer to Tarila, showering her with expensive gifts and attention. She was now permitted to style her hair and wear makeup, and her wardrobe underwent a noticeable transformation. It was no longer obvious that she was the less privileged relative. When Tarila turned 18, her birthday was celebrated for the first time, which Ebiere attributed to Bina's satisfaction that Tarila had gained admission to university. I also noticed that Tarila received fine gold jewelry from Bina, and from then on, she regularly wore simple yet elegant pieces. About a year after Tarila's 18th birthday celebration, a serious argument broke out between Bina and Ebiere. Looking back, I cannot recall the specific cause of their quarrel, but I do remember how deeply wounded Ebiere was by something Bina had said. That evening, she arrived at my home in tears, accompanied by the children and carrying their bags. She explained that they would be spending the night at my house and that the following day she planned to travel with the children to Warri to stay with her parents. Concerned, I immediately asked, "Where is Tarila?" Ebiere replied, "She's in the house. She told me she didn't want to leave as it would interrupt her schooling, and that besides, she wasn't the one who had quarreled with Bina." Hearing this, I felt compelled to act. Without hesitation, I grabbed my car keys and a belt and drove straight over to the house. Tarila answered the door. She was dressed in a pair of bomb shorts and a vest and was preparing dinner for Bina, who was in his home office. "Who brought you to this house?" I demanded. My question seemed to baffle her. She looked at me in confusion, clearly not understanding what I meant. I had no intention of explaining myself or engaging in a discussion. Instead, I focused on my purpose. I took out my belt and disciplined her, insisting she live with me. When she complied, I drove her back to my house and reunited her with Ebiere. About an hour later, Bina came to my house when he realized that Tarila had left as well. He had a conversation with my husband, after which he apologized to Ebiere, and they all went home together. I'm unsure what Bina discussed with my husband, as my husband didn't share the details. However, his stern warning to me to stay out of Ebiere's marriage made it clear that Bina was displeased with my actions. Following that event, I sensed a change in our friendship. So acting on my husband's advice, I kept my distance. I was unaware of her cancer diagnosis, but 2 years later, Ebiere passed away. In retrospect, perhaps it was fortunate that we had drifted apart, so her death did not hurt me as deeply as it might have if we were still close. Soon after her funeral, my husband and I moved to America, which led me to lose contact with Bina and the children. On the morning of Ebiere's 5th memorial, I awoke with her memory weighing heavily on my mind. Since I was in Lagos for a few weeks, while our home was undergoing renovations, I felt compelled to visit Ebiere's old house. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but what greeted me upon arrival was entirely unexpected. From the outside, the house had undergone significant changes. It had been recently remodeled and upgraded. However, it was not only the exterior that had transformed. The inside was different too. By this, I do not simply mean the furnishings, but rather the people who now called it home. When Tarila opened the door, her smile was warm and her greeting sincere. Yet beneath her happiness lingered an unmistakable sense of caution in her eyes. As I observed her, I could not help but notice the subtle transformations. Her figure, the wedding ring on her finger, and the atmosphere of the house itself. These details spoke volumes. It was evident, without any words being exchanged, that this was no longer Ebiere's matrimonial home. The space once filled with Ebiere's presence and memories had gradually become Tarila's. She had assumed a new role within these familiar walls, and the house now reflected her own life and circumstances. Once inside, Tarila welcomed me warmly. The nanny soon appeared, bringing her 3-year-old twins for me to meet before retreating with them, while the housemaid offered me some refreshments. Tarila was talkative and animated, eager to hear about my time in America and asking about my husband and children. She chatted about many things, yet conspicuously avoided mentioning the most significant matter. She was now married to her late sister's husband and had children with him. How that situation had come about remained unspoken between us. I sat quietly, smiling slightly as I watched her and glanced at Ebiere's photos in the living room. Although I appreciated how she preserved Ebiere's memory, seeing pictures of her, Bina, and all their children together overwhelmed me. "So how does it feel to be marrying your late sister's husband?" I asked quietly. Maybe it was my look or tone, but something triggered Tarila's hidden guilt, and she broke down in tears. "Sister Preye, it is not like that," she pleaded as she grabbed the tissue from the box of Kleenex on the coffee table and tried to compose herself. "So how is it?" I asked. "Enlighten me. How did you become Bina's wife? When exactly did your relationship with your sister's husband change, Tarila?" As she opened her mouth to respond, I gripped my glass of orange juice a bit too firmly, my hands shaking and my heart pounding as I brought it to my lips. I wished their relationship had changed after Ebiere's passing. I hoped my suspicions were unfounded. I prayed they hadn't betrayed Ebiere while she was alive and married to Bina. It started a long time ago. When I was 9, something happened between Bina and me. As Tarila's words faded and silence settled between us, I drew in a sharp breath. The significance of her referring to him simply as Bina rather than Brother Bina as she had always done struck me deeply. It underscored the gravity and finality of the situation. Ebiere was gone, and the reality that Tarila had taken her place as Mrs. Bina Datari became undeniable. She took in a deep breath before speaking again. When I was 16, Sister Ebiere traveled for a week, leaving me at home with the children. And one evening after the kids were in bed, Bina asked me to come and spend time with him in the bedroom as he wanted some company. I agreed, but I was frightened as I had had a bad experience with him years ago. But he assured me that he would never do what he did that night. And he gave me a chance to talk about how I felt. It was difficult, but I was grateful for a chance to talk about it, as my family had swept it under the carpet and never gave me a chance to talk about the emotional effect. He wept and asked my forgiveness for the pain he had caused, and said he wanted me to know that I was safe with him and that he would never harm me and would take care of me. I continued to go to his room every night Sister Ebiere was away, and we would lie down there and talk about different topics, and I soon began to relax around Bina. Tarila hesitated, drawing in another deep breath. The discomfort evident as she continued to divulge her story. It was clear she felt compelled to share, possibly seeking relief from the guilt she carried. I sat quietly, sipping my orange juice, observing her in silence as my gaze shifted between her anxious face and the wedding photograph of Ebiere on the wall. The picture taken when Ebiere was about the same age as Tarila is now highlighted their striking resemblance. It struck me how in marrying Tarila, Bina seemed to have chosen someone so similar to Ebiere, as if he had married the same woman twice. After the incident where a man dropped me off in the rain, I began to walk on eggshells around Bina. Although I trusted him not to molest me, I worried that given his fierce anger, he might hit me. The following week, Sister Ebiere asked me to go to Bina's home office to talk to him. I went, and when he asked me to shut the door behind me, I didn't think much of it because my sister was home and she had encouraged me to meet with him. Once inside, he asked me to sit and then joined me on the sofa. He held my hand and apologized for his previous rage. He explained that he had not meant to scare me or ask me to leave his home. He said he loved me and didn't want any man to ruin my life. He assured me that his angry words were not how he truly felt and that he wanted me to stay because of his affection for me. At the time, I didn't think much about him saying he loved me, as I assumed it was the same kind of love Sister Ebiere had for me. However, after that meeting, whenever Sister Ebiere was away, he would ask me to sleep in her spot for the night with his arms around me. And though we were not intimate, we shared kisses. He said he was the only man I was allowed to do that with, and that if I saved myself for him, he would take care of me just as he did with Sister Ebiere. When I turned 18, he said I was no longer a child and I should let him be intimate with me, as he had been waiting years since that first time. I agreed, and he was so excited that he threw me a lavish 18th birthday party. The more I let him be intimate with me, the more he spoiled me with cash and jewelry. After my sister died, I found it impossible to carry on. I realized that much of the time she spent traveling was in search of help for her illness, a burden she carried alone until just weeks before her passing. The guilt I felt was overwhelming, and I became consumed by self-loathing. Ultimately, I ended the affair and moved out of the house for an entire year. However, during that time, Bina stopped supporting me. "So you came back to him for comfort?" I asked, my voice sounding sharper than I intended it to. She shook her head, avoiding my gaze. "No, Sister Preye. I came back for the family." After I moved out, Bina paid little attention to the kids or their well-being, aside from providing financial support for the household. He started dating a woman and she moved in. She made drastic changes that hurt the children. All the family photos were taken down. Not just my sister's, but even the children's pictures. Bina was away from home frequently, and the woman was harsh with the kids. They begged me to return, but how could I, after I had walked away? "What happened next?" I inquired, aware there was more to the story that explained how she transitioned from that point to becoming Bina's wife. My mother called me and asked me to marry Bina to save the family. Bina had stopped supporting them as he had done for many years. He said he was joining a new family and needed to concentrate on that family. My mother begged me to marry him for the sake of the family, for my late sister and her children. She said it was me Bina wanted, not the other woman, and that if I returned to him, he would help us all again. So I came to the house again and said I wanted to move back and asked him to forgive me for leaving, and he agreed. I gasped and raised the brow. He allowed you to move in while this other woman was in the house? Tarila smiled sadly and nodded. She didn't sleep in the house that night. She and Bina had a big argument because Bina insisted that I stay since I was family. He asked her to leave as he had not formally paid her bride price to her family and wasn't sure that he wanted to. Just like that? She nodded. Just like that. I love Bina, but he can be ruthless when it benefits him. After she left, Bina apologized to me for everything he had put everyone through, and we resumed our relationship as if nothing had happened. I remodeled the house to reflect my taste, while also honoring my sister and keeping her memory alive for the children. Meanwhile, Bina returned to supporting my parents by upgrading their home, changing their cars, and increasing their monthly allowance. And what about the children? She smiled, tears filling her eyes. The children are happy once again. I may only be their aunt, not their mother, but I helped raise them and love them as if they were my own. My goal here is to ensure that at the end of the day, my sister and I win. But do you enjoy being married to Bina? She wiped away her tears and nodded, her voice tinged with both vulnerability and resolve. Bina is a wonderful husband and a great father to the 4 children. He is not perfect, and I am well aware that there are many things wrong with the way we arrived at this point. I still struggle with feelings of guilt whenever I think about my sister, constantly questioning whether I have betrayed her. Nevertheless, this is my reality now. I am Bina's wife, and we love each other. So to answer your question, yes, I do enjoy being married to Bina, even if it is awkward to explain that his first wife was my older sister. I stood up, deciding that I had heard enough for now. As I left Tarila's house, the weight of everything I had just heard pressed down on me. The story she shared, how her relationship with Bina had unfolded, the secrets, the betrayals, swirled in my mind, refusing to settle. I kept picturing Ebiere's photographs on the wall, her smile frozen in time, watching over a home that was no longer hers. Hearing Tarila recount how their relationship deepened, how she was drawn in, how she felt both cared for and manipulated, made my stomach turn. The secrecy, the guilt, the way love and dependency became tangled with betrayal. I couldn't help but feel sick at the thought of Ebiere being betrayed by the 2 people she loved most, and while battling sickness she kept to herself. And yet, as Tarila spoke, I saw her pain and confusion. She hadn't set out to hurt her sister. She'd been a child, then a young woman, swept along by forces she barely understood. The family's silence, the pressure to keep the peace, had left her isolated and vulnerable. Was she a victim, a participant, or both? I found myself questioning everything. Did Ebiere know? Had she suspected? Was her silence a form of protection or resignation, especially as she battled her illness? I would never know. All I could do was mourn the loss of my friend, the disintegration of a family, and the complicated, messy reality that remained. By the time I reached my own home, I could no longer hold back the tears. I wept for Ebiere, for Tarila, for the innocence lost and the secrets that had festered for so long. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of episode 24 of DOZ Monologues. DOZ Monologues will return next week with another episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave your comments and subscribe, like, and share if listening on YouTube. To contact me, please visit my website eturuvie.erebor.com or email me at eturuvie@eturuvieerebor.com. I invite all story lovers to explore my novels and novellas available on Amazon and Google Books. For audiobook enthusiasts, they are also on Audible. Thank you for listening. I am your favorite storyteller, Eturuvie Erebor, and I'll be here next Friday with another story.